Good evening. Cheers. My name is Ray Capote, and I'm here for the Misfits. So those who have been watching my channel probably wondering, why did I pick the Misfits? Well, during college I was always into classic cars, and I saw a magazine, and I also saw the car in person at a car lot, and I said, I gotta have that car. And it was basically a 1961 Cadillac. This was a green four-door metallic. So I started getting into anything that was 1961. I know Kennedy got inaugurated that year, and I started looking into all the movies, and I just loved that style that Kennedy had. His, that new style with the narrow lapel and the narrow tie, the slim pants. I thought it was really cool. And I'll be wearing some of that during some of these episodes. So I just went I loved antique stores since I was little. Ended up going into one and saw a magazine, and it turned out to be a Life magazine, January 13th, 1961. And the cool thing about it that caught my attention was it also had Clark Gable on the cover. That said right down here, his last film. So, that was very important to me. So not only was it 1961 that I was looking for, but it also had Clark Gable on the cover. And then what I was specifically looking for in these, getting these magazines, was finding any ads with the 1961 Cadillac. But anyway, to make a long story short, I did not see the film. I read through it a little bit, and I also noticed that Marilyn Monroe was in it. So not only was it Clark Gable's last film, it was also Marilyn Monroe's last completed film. So you can't get bigger than that, right? You can't get bigger than Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe. Two of the greatest American icons. And Gable, one of the greatest actors, Gone with the Wind, It Happened One Night, The Misfits, and many others. Movie legend. And then Marilyn Monroe, of course. And as I got into many of our videos, that she started out as a model, and then she always wanted to be taken seriously as an actress. But more than anything else, she was an American icon. It doesn't get bigger than that, not just that, international icon. And so I remember when I was a kid, this was like in the late 70s. Dorothy Hamill was really hot back then, and then my mother said, I'm gonna take you to get a haircut. I go, fine. And she went to get me a haircut, and then when it turned out to be like this academy where, women and guys, they go in there and they want to study to be hairdressers or whatever. And I go, Mom, why are you taking me in there? This is embarrassing, and it's all women in there. It's just, women that are married. I was like in 8th grade, 7th grade. And she said, well, they're really good, number one, and they're cheap because they're learning. This is their school. They want to have a career in hairdressing and, hair cutting. Go, fine. So I just looked around, snuck in. I didn't want to see any of my friends from school seeing me walk in there. And basically, I walked out of there with a Dorothy Hamill haircut. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it looked great. But the thing that caught my attention was the moment I walked in, I saw this huge mural on the wall. It took up the whole wall. And you had about, I don't know, 30 stations of these women and guys cutting hair and, rinsing their hair and dyeing their hair and all that. Like I said, it's 90% women. And I'm like this 12-year-old kid walking in there. It's just, this is nuts. And I'm going, and I go, who is that? And someone said, that's Marilyn Monroe. I go, Marilyn Monroe? Well, she must be important to be on this entire wall. So that was the first time I really kind of figured out who Marilyn Monroe was. And so this was in the late 70s. Cheers again. Old Crow. What I love about Old Crow, by the way, is that for whatever reason, it goes down smooth. Can't really find it in the stores anymore. You can order it online. Some stores will carry it, but very few. I haven't seen any. But it doesn't give you a hangover or anything. It's really, really good whiskey. So that was my first experience with Marilyn Monroe. And then you fast forward, saw this magazine, and then she's in it with Clark Gable. Let me show you this. So if you've been watching my videos, this one here is what I've been basing most of my videos on. The gentleman's name is James Good. He was a journalist from Los Angeles, and he went up to Reno when they were filming the Misfits. And he had exclusive rights to cover the filming in and around Reno. So it was, they stayed at the Mapes Hotel, they went over to Pyramid Lake, northeast of Reno. They went down to Dayton, which you go south and then east, which they did the bar scene. It's called the Odeon Bar, okay? That's when Marilyn did her paddle ball, which is just unbelievable. That was by the way, added in later by Arthur Miller, who thought would really add to the movie. And I heard that Marilyn didn't like it because, it was portraying her again as this blonde bimbo. But they did the rodeo scenes there as well. They had the scene when they were driving up in the station wagon and Perce Howland, played by Montgomery Clift, was sitting by the telephone booth looking to get into the rodeo. That was on Dayton. So, and I actually went there this past summer. And looked at all those spots, and you'll see the videos I made of that. So, with this book here, I started it on the first day of shooting was July 18th, 1960. So this was July 18th, 2025, when I decided to try to do it day by day as it was 65 years prior in 1960. And I went up to Reno, filmed all the spots where they filmed this movie, and some were very difficult to find. And then I try to do every episode on that day 65 years ago. So if they did this certain scene on this certain day, I try to coincide it with that in 2025, and now we're in 2026. So the last video I did, they actually finished this book right here, and that's when Taylor went out to New York, producer Taylor, and he took the reels that were completed. It's called the answer print, and then he had a showing, a screening to those who could attend. And the book basically ended right there. Clearly, Arthur Miller was very, very moved by his relationship with Clark Gable. You know, he was going through a very rough time. Gable really bought into the movie. Marilyn, not so much, but in fact, Marilyn thought that it wasn't that well done. It wasn't that good. She thought she pretty much nailed the character of Rosalind Tabor, but she felt that, you know, she wasn't sure that the movie was going to be successful, and also that some of the scenes, like the paddle scene that Arthur Miller stuck in there, kind of tried to reinforce her old stereotypes. So she didn't really care for that. And of course, she was struggling with her health at this time. She would die 2 years later, sadly. But she was struggling with her health throughout the film. She went directly from Let's Make Love to Misfits, and that took a toll on her. She was just very, very busy. And even director John Huston mentioned that she didn't get enough time to rest between those two films, and it affected her a lot. So what we're gonna do in the next few months is we're gonna dive into this unbelievable book. If you can, get it tomorrow. It's called Mimosa. So here it is. It's by Ralph L. Roberts. Okay, so Mr. Roberts was Marilyn Monroe's masseuse, and he was also a masseuse to many famous actors. He started out in the actor studio. So after the war, he wanted to be an actor. And, you know, the federal government would give grants to anyone who wanted to pursue any kind of career. In his case, he wanted to be an actor. So he went to New York. And New York, post-war New York, was just a hotbed for acting. So he was at the actor studio, and he saw her come in. And he asked someone that was there, and he goes, "Who is that?" And he said, "Are you kidding me? You know, that's Marilyn Monroe." So this would have been around the early 50s, right when Marilyn, she did Niagara, she did Asphalt Jungle, and she was starting to become pretty popular. Cheers again. And for those who don't drink, no problem. Excuse me. Yes, Marilyn. Well, I'm in the middle of an episode. Can I get right back to you? Thank you, sweetheart. Okay. Bye. There was a lady named Marilyn. It was strange. Sir Laurence Olivier in The Prince and the Showgirl. So that would be before Let's Make Love with Yves Montand. She did that film, and Sir Laurence Olivier mentioned that he couldn't figure out why can't she cross this line into a good actress, into a serious actress. And he said, you know, this is a model. This is a model. And she's projecting her career as a model onto her career as an actress. And she just couldn't differentiate the two. In other words, the moment the cameras started rolling, she became the model. And she just couldn't get in the character. She like overplayed. She did these weird movements with her walking and the high pitched voice. And by the way, the high pitched voice, I looked into that. that, to me, that was the key. If she could change that, she could have been really taken more as a serious actress as she wanted to be. But as a child, apparently she stuttered, and I looked high and low for the information here. And what was going on apparently was that she stuttered, and this high-pitched voice that she would use alleviated the stuttering. It would stop it. Thank you for watching Indians Wake Up for the Misfits Mystique.